Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
I have a baby. I want to move on. I want Johnny to move on too.
Hear the conclusion of Heard's emotional direct examination. And Heard's cross-examination gets heated.
This was a multi-day assault that took place over 3 horrible days.
Ms. Heard,
it's the worst thing ever happened to me.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question.
But first, Amber Heard's take on her infamous Washington Post op-ed.
I was talking about a bigger issue, actually, than just Johnny.
We're live in Fairfax, Virginia, with day 17 of the defamation trial. Then later,
Mr. Duke, did you murder Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
Did you break into her home on October 22nd or 23rd, 2005?
No, sir, I did not.
Ryan Duke takes the stand in his own defense as he faces murder charges for the death of Tara Grinstead. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome, everyone, to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. Amber Heard on the stand for a third day, answering questions about everything having to do with her marriage to Johnny Depp and the Washington Post op-ed at the center of the defamation case. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with what Heard said about the piece that led to Depp suing her. Anjanette?
Well, Brian, we heard a lot of testimony, much of that cross-examination by Amber Heard or by Camille Vasquez to Amber Heard, and she talked a lot about that Washington Post op-ed. It's obviously what Johnny Depp is suing her over. Now, that op-ed was published in December of 2018, and the headline, you'll recall, talked about sexual violence. Heard said the op-ed was not about Johnny Depp. That contradicts testimony from the General Counsel for the American Civil Liberties Union, Terrence Doherty, who said it was clear to him from reading early drafts of the piece that it was all about Johnny Depp. Heard also tweeted the op-ed. Here's a little bit of the cross-examination.
It's your testimony that this op-ed isn't about Mr. Depp, right?
It's about what happened to me after. That's correct.
It's about your experience after obtaining a temporary restraining order against Mr. Depp, right?
That is correct, among other things.
But it's not about Mr. Depp.
It is not about him.
Mr. Depp is making it about Mr. Depp, right?
Ironically.
Let's talk about the defamatory statements in the op-ed that you also claim are not about Mr. Depp. Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. This is about Mr. Depp, isn't it?
No.
You wrote this in 2018, right?
Exactly.
And 2 years prior was 2016, right?
That's true.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
it's not about Johnny. It's about what happened to me after.
May 2016 is when you publicly accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence, right?
I got my restraining order at that time.
And you publicly accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence.
Yes, that was attached to my restraining order, so yes.
And May 2016 is when you walked into court with a mark on your face to obtain that restraining order. Yes or no?
That was the day I walked into court with a bruise on my face, yes.
And you were photographed with that mark on your face, weren't you?
I walked out to a bunch of photographers, yes.
May 2016 is when you told the world that Mr. Depp had physically abused you during your relationship. Isn't that right?
I had to provide testimony as part of my restraining order application, yes.
And that's how you became a public figure representing domestic abuse.
From that point on, yes.
That's when you claimed you faced our culture's wrath, right?
That's when it started, yes.
But it's your testimony under oath that this statement is not about Mr. Depp.
It is not. It is about what happened to me afterwards. That's the more interesting thing for me to write about.
And there was also an interesting line of questioning by Camille Vasquez about a tweet that Amber Heard sent out with this op-ed, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, so what? She tweeted it. What does it matter? Well, it matters a whole lot. Tweeting is an act of publishing. And by tweeting out that op-ed, she's effectively endorsing it. So a lot of people may not understand that, but a tweet is considered publishing. And we are all responsible for every word that we put out on social media, whether it be a tweet, a Facebook post, or any other type of thing, even an Instagram post. Brian?
That's good to know as I look at my tweets and Instagram, Anjanette. Anjanette, what was your reaction to how What was your reaction to how Attorney Vasquez started her cross-examination of Amber Heard?
You know, I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was really effective because she started questioning her about, she said she was here because of this reason, because she was being sued. And really, I thought it was very effective, and she used a lot of these recordings of Amber Heard's and brought them up, recordings of her, claiming that, telling Johnny Depp, just try to tell a judge and jury, tell the world I am a victim of domestic violence too. And I thought that was really effective because the jury is hearing that clip again, because Amber Heard in that clip is essentially saying, yeah, you're a victim of domestic violence. Tell them it was a fair fight.
Yeah. Now, I'm expecting the next 24 hours are going to see Camille Vasquez all over social media, kind of mic dropping on cross-examinations. But were there any major bombshell moments for you in the cross?
You know what I thought was really interesting? Camille Vasquez didn't let Amber Heard go on and on. We had heard her talk on direct examination. There were a lot of objections by Camille Vasquez, objections to hearsay and things of that nature. Well, she shut those all down. It's like objection, hearsay. A lot of those were sustained. And she really controlled her and said, Miss Heard, I'm going to, strike everything that you said after that. She would ask the judge to strike it. And she said the answer to that question was yes. And she really controlled her. And that's what a good cross does. It gets at the heart of the issue. It looks for the truth, and you control the witness. And Camille Vasquez was definitely in control.
Now, do you think that we'll see Johnny Depp or Amber Heard back on the stand, maybe called by their opposing attorneys?
I don't know about Amber Heard, but I've been led to believe that it's a certainty that her team, Amber Heard's team, will call Johnny Depp back to the stand.
All right, we'll see how that plays out. And Jeanette, just hang out with us there for a moment. We'll be back with you. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, our coverage of the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard defamation trial continues. Ahead, how Depp's attorneys began Heard's cross-examination and what points did they hit on Tuesday morning. Welcome back. Before Heard's cross-examination focused on the infamous Washington Post op-ed, Depp's attorneys opened with a shocking revelation: why their client has not looked at Heard at all during the trial.
Mr. Depp hasn't looked at you once this entire trial, has he?
Not that I've noticed, no.
You've looked at him, though, many times, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
You know exactly why Mr. Depp won't look back at you, don't you?
I do.
He promised you you would never see his eyes again. Isn't that true?
I don't recall if he said that.
Later, jurors saw comparison photos of Heard's alleged facial injuries. Depp's attorneys pushed Heard on this, saying multiple witnesses did not see the bruising.
You testify that they were taken the same day.
I don't know if I think I testified that they came from the same incident of the same day, not necessarily taken on the same day.
You testified yesterday that the only difference between these two photographs is that the light was turned on.
That's what it appears to be, yes.
Isn't it true you just edited these photographs?
No, I've never edited a photograph.
Didn't you just enhance the saturation for one of these photos to make your face look more red?
No, that's incorrect. I didn't touch it.
Mr. Baruch testified that he saw you repeatedly in the days following also, correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Baruch testified that he saw no marks or injuries on your face, correct?
That is what he's testified to.
You were also here in this court when Mr. Sean Bett testified to seeing you on the evening of May 21, 2016. Is that right? You were here.
That's correct.
Mr. Bett also testified that he saw no marks or injuries on your face that evening, correct?
I realize that's what he said.
Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Jack Rice, co-host Terry Austin, and correspondent Jeanette Levy, live from outside the court. Jack, is a lack of photos and photos where injuries are, let's say, questionable, show that Depp is trying to prove that Heard is lying?
Yes, on both sides. Remember, that's the benefit that Vasquez has really had here, is what you're showing is when you have evidence, notice what that evidence provides. And when you purposely, oddly, don't have any evidence, that actually supports the very argument that they're making too. So what they're doing, they're boxing her in to show not only is what you're saying false, you're also manipulating it, trying to make the jury think something else. So in fact, it works very, very well. And I think was another example of cutting away at her credibility.
Yeah, when you make the jury think that one side is manipulating them, it's very good for that side who's pointing that out. Terry, Depp's attorneys tried to clarify why Johnny Depp will not look directly at Amber Heard. Do you think that helped to explain to the jury why he's often looking down?
Oh, I think it was a great way to start off that cross-examination. Camille Vasquez asked her, look, you know for a fact why he is looking down. He is looking down because he said after that TRO, after you filed divorce, when you were together in July, when you were trying to reconcile in 2016, you will never be able to look into my eyes again. And when Amber Heard acted as though, no, it's that he can't look in my eyes because he's the aggressor, they played that audio. They played the clip where he talked about the fact you are never going to look into my eyes again. So I thought it was an excellent way to start off, and it was very interesting. And it was good because I think the jury was thinking, why is he looking down? Great way to start.
Yeah, smart. I would agree too. And Jeanette, you're there on the ground, finger on the pulse. What should we expect next in the Depp Heard trial?
Well, more witnesses from Amber Heard, of course, and I've been led to believe that she will definitely, her attorneys will be calling Johnny Depp to testify. So we are awaiting that, and we're just going to have to wait and see if that happens. That's what I learned last week. A lot of people didn't believe it, so look forward to tomorrow. Also, you know, any rebuttal case. There could be a rebuttal case from Johnny Depp. I think there will be a rebuttal case. I can't say for sure. But who knows? Maybe Depp testifies again in the rebuttal case along with Dr. Shannon Curry.
Yeah, I would bet my last dollar that we're going to get a rebuttal case here. I don't think Johnny Depp is going to let Amber Heard have the last word here. But either way, we'll be here at Law&Crime Daily watching, highly anticipated. And Jeanette, thank you as always for reporting. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, we take a closer look at Amber Heard's direct examination. Still ahead, Heard breaks down on the stand why she says the trial has been traumatic. Welcome back. We continue our coverage of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial as Heard's attorneys wrap up direct examination questioning Monday. Heard testified about what brought on the lawsuit in the first place, the Washington Post op-ed.
What, if any, ill will or bad intentions did you have or intend against Mr. Depp by assisting in writing, giving your name to this op-ed, and in publishing it?
None. It's not about Johnny. The only one who thought it was about Johnny is Johnny. It's about me. It's about what happened to me after Johnny. It's about what happened to me after I escaped my marriage. It was about me and my life and what I endured once I moved on and got a TRO and moved on with my life. It was about what happened to me after. The only one who made it about him, ironically, is Johnny. I have to relive this every single day that I have to address those claims. Over and over again, the most intimate, embarrassing, deeply humiliating and personal things that I've survived are used against me every day. Over and over again. It's torture. I'm in so much pain, emotionally. I just wanted him to leave me alone. I wanted to move on with my life. And he won't let me. By making statements like this, he won't let me. I have to be here today. I have to be reliving it every single time. He, with these statements, with these leaks, these comments, once again, makes me have to speak to the most horrifying things I have lived through. It's torture. It's torturous. I want you to have to do that. I want to move on with my life.
Tara, we just heard Amber there saying she wants to move on with her life and that Depp is the one that's making their lives public. But do you think the evidence so far supports her statement?
Well, I don't think the evidence supports her statement. And listen, we know for a fact the sequence is like this. Heard was the one who filed for divorce. So she's the first person to put anything out there in the public. She was the one who, several days later also filed this domestic violence temporary restraining order. So she, again, put their lives out in the public. She even agreed that they would stop talking about it. They had that, joint statement that they made, but she violated that. And one thing we learned today that I wasn't aware of is that in October of 2018, right before the Washington Post article was published, she initiated a defamation arbitration. So again, she's out in the public. Then, of course, the Washington Post article, which put it in the public. So she's not trying to hide from anything. I think at the end of the day, Johnny Depp finally had to file this lawsuit to straighten out the situation. And listen, she even tried to get the last lick in, and she filed a counterclaim. So she's not trying to keep her life private.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe there's some correlation between getting her last licks in and the way this started with the actual case we're here about, the abuse case. Well, Jack, Heard gave an impassioned end to her direct. Is that a strong way to end, or did that open her up to something on cross?
No, it absolutely opens her up. I mean, when we look at where we are right now and what we have, what we saw directly during cross was all about credibility. And in this case, we're also arguing about manipulation and about her willingness to do whatever it took for Amber Heard. And that's exactly what it is that Vasquez actually dealt with and addressed over and over again. But if we even think about this broader question of what she did with the Washington Post op-ed, this was about Johnny Depp. There was no question about that. And to make the argument that it wasn't just undercut her credibility again and again and again.
Yeah, there were some arguments here that I don't think she really needed to die on that hill, so to speak. She could have let that go, but doing that really paints her in a poor light. Well, we'll see how Camille Vasquez handles that next. When we come back, the defendant takes the stand in his own defense in the Georgia case of murdered teacher and beauty queen Tara Grinstead. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. The state rests its case as the defendant takes the stand in the Tara Grinstead murder trial, where Ryan Duke faces charges for the death of the former teacher. In 2017, Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes were charged in connection to Tara Grinstead's murder. The pair are not related, though, but were friends at the time of the former beauty queen's disappearance. Grinstead went missing from her Georgia home in 2005. For years, the case had very few leads until the podcast Up and Vanish reignited an interest in the case. After its release, both Duke and Dukes were arrested. Prosecutors say Ryan Duke confessed to killing Grinstead after he broke into her home. They say Bo Dukes helped burn her body. On Monday, Duke's defense team called its first witness, a psychologist who did an assessment of Duke and reviewed his confession tape. The doctor testified the defendant has signs of neuroticism, anxiety, and sleep deprivation, which his attorneys argue played a role in his false confession. The defense called several other witnesses who gave brief testimony. On Tuesday, Ryan Duke himself took the stand, telling jurors he is not responsible for the death of Tara Grinstead. Instead, he pointed the finger at Bo Dukes.
Mr. Duke, did you murder Tara Grinstead?
I did not.
Did you break into her home on October 22nd or 23rd, 2005?
No, sir, I did not.
Have you ever been inside her home at any point in your life?
No, sir, I hadn't.
Did you see Miss Grinstead's body after she died?
I did.
Where did you see it?
In the pecan orchard.
Did somebody take you to the body?
They did.
Who took you to the body?
Bo Dukes.
Did Bo Dukes tell you that he killed Tara Grinstead?
He did.
Were you asked to help dispose of her body?
I was.
Who asked you to do that?
Bo Dukes.
Did you help Bo Dukes move Miss Grinstead's body in the orchard?
I did.
Were you afraid that he'd hurt you or your family if you told anyone about it?
I was.
Is that why you didn't come forward prior to February of 2017?
Yes, sir.
Cross-examination began Tuesday afternoon. Hear more from Ryan Duke and from Bo Dukes on the next episode of Law and Crime Daily. Jack, what did you think of the order of the witnesses before Duke and then that final statement? He didn't kill Grinstead, Bo Dukes did.
When a jury remembers this, and they're going to look back at this when they're in deliberations, they remember it frequently two ways. primacy, which means at the beginning, the first thing they hear, and recency, the last thing they hear. And they needed the primacy piece because they had to be able to say, how could somebody admit to a crime that they didn't commit? It's a question I've heard a million times. They had to address it, and they had to address it importantly. And then at the very end, you had to be able to come back and say, it wasn't me. I think it was smart to bookend it in that way.
Absolutely. Primacy, recency, and then the other one is frequency as well. It'll be interesting to see how often they say it as well. Terry, the jury has already seen a confession by Ryan Duke. How do you think they will reconcile that with his claim that he did not do the killing?
Well, you know, Jack mentioned the bookends, and they did start out with this confession, and I think his confession was pretty credible. So I think it's really hurting the defense. He was calm, he was collected. It was contrary to his attorney's claim that he was under the influence of drugs. It did not look like he had any drugs in his system, and he described exactly what happened. And of course, he's trying to claim that it was coerced, but it really did not look that way. And so he did have to come back and explain on the stand why this confession was made, and he had nothing to do with the killing, because the jury is thinking about the fact that that confession is sitting out there. And like Jack said, they don't think that people make up confessions. If you do a confession, you probably did it. So we'll see what they decide.
Well, there's a lot of false confessions out there as well in overturning of the case. But we'll see what the jury decides. Thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.